Hi, I'm Kaye Spivey. So I wasn't directly tagged, but I was tangentially tagged by Marissa Mohi to do the Author Newbie Tag because she said that everybody should do it. So that includes me. I'm part of the Authortube community, I guess. Question number 1, how did you find out about Authortube? I only heard that term used quite recently. I've been following some authors on YouTube for quite a while. I had heard the booktube community as a thing, but I hadn't heard Authortube referred to that way until pretty recently, like this year. I probably found it initially through Tumblr. I think one of the earliest Authortube videos I watched was probably either NaNoWriMo related, probably Cat's NaNoWriMo video. You can hear bells, the cats are running around. Either Cat's NaNoWriMo video or Ellen Brock's advice videos. Question number 2 is, what genres do you write? I write primarily fantasy with a little bit of dystopian, especially in short stories, a little bit of contemporary, dark contemporary, and a little bit of dystopian. But for the most part, I enjoy writing fantasy and I write a lot of poetry. Question number 3 is, what is your preferred writing tense, point of view, and writing category? I tend to write in third person limited and in past tense. I feel like present tense is a slippery slope. It can make me very anxious when I'm reading it. So I have written in present tense before, but I find it very awkward. I feel like it's very natural to do past tense when writing a story, and in the same vein, I find it more natural to do third person limited. Question number 4, are you a planner, a pantser, or a plantser? Which are all terms that came from NaNoWriMo. In case anyone didn't know that, that's where all of those terms like formulated around. I am more of a plantser. I used to try and just pants it with like barely any actual outlining of any kind. I deeply regretted that with book number 1 in my circuit series. I wish I had planned a little bit better and the revision process would not have been quite so grueling. So this time around I'm going to be more dedicated towards planning. I come up with the vague idea, I come up with kind of the progression of the story. I know what I want the beginning to be, I kind of know where I want it to go, I know vaguely who the characters are, and then for writing the drafting I just go for it. So plantser, essentially. Question number 5, are you self-published, traditionally published, or have yet to be published? So my poetry books, this is going to be an all cats video apparently. You guys usually don't come around when I'm filming. It's because it's later in the day than it usually is, and they're all stirred up. So both my poetry books are self-published. I have had a number of poems published. I've had one short story so far that has been published by a literary magazine. And in terms of what I want to do, I want to get my novel traditionally published with getting an agent and going through a publishing house and all of that. So that is my trajectory for my novel. Question number 6 then is pretty long, so I'm gonna read it. What publishing company, literary agent, and or printing company are you represented by or use? Or if you're not yet published, what is your dream publishing house or literary agent? That is a really tough question. I feel like you really put yourself in a box when you're like dedicated to someone. And I think to an extent, like there are some really big names that's like, oh, it'd be such a dream if I was published by Penguin or Random House or HarperCollins. The fact of the matter is I want my book to find the home that is going to be best for me and best for it and best for reaching the audience that wants to read it. And to me it doesn't matter where that is as long as it finds the best possible niche for itself. So no, I don't have a dream publishing house exactly, and no, I don't have a specific literary agent in mind. I feel like my dream literary agent is going to be someone with whom I can sit down and have a conversation and feel completely at ease and not like I'm trying to prove anything to them, and they can feel comfortable talking to me and we can have more like a friendship kind of thing, but in a professional setting, and not feel like I'm being judged all the time, and that with someone capable of getting my book where it needs to be in the world, that's my dream literary agent. And because I haven't talked to someone face to face and like created that bond with someone, there's not a person in mind. I'm just hoping that that like comfortableness and that common goal shows up, and that's what I'm looking for in a literary agent. I know that was long-winded, but I feel like that's more important than it being like one specific person that, oh, they're so good. Like anyone can be good at being a literary agent if they've got the tools and the passion for it, I think. Question number 7, what AuthorTube related videos can we expect from your channel? I do a lot of poetry type videos. I feel like I want to get more poetry out into the world. I want to create more of a love of poetry among people. I want to have more poetry information accessible. I feel like there's really sparse kind of craft and technique videos out there. There wasn't a history of poetry video, which is why I made the history of American poetry video. I'd like to make more of those. I keep meaning to do a couple more. Maybe I'll get on that sometime. Let me know if you're interested in more of those, if you've seen the other one. They're kind of fun to make, so maybe I'll do another one pretty soon. I want to do some NaNoWriMo videos. I am willing to take requests on things you guys would like to hear for that, because I feel like I have a lot to say about NaNoWriMo. I've been doing it for so long now. 12 actual writing years I've been doing NaNoWriMo, since 2005, and I skipped a year. More videos like that, kind of just what I'm up to. As I'm going through the querying process, I'm going to probably talk more about that as well. When someday I get an agent, I'll talk about that and that process. I'm working on getting another poetry book together. I'll talk about that. Just kind of, I'd like to talk about things that are going on for me and things that I feel like I have something to say about. And if you guys have any specific videos you'd like to see, I would be happy to work through and make anything. I like rambling about things I'm passionate about sometimes, so you never know I'm gonna go off on a tangent about. Question number 8, when did you start writing? I don't know how anyone has like a specific, like literally as soon as I could write sentences myself, I was writing stories. I was coming up with stories long before that. I was just that type of child where I was making up stories. I was very playful, I guess, very creative. And yeah, as soon as I could start writing, I was making stories up. I think the first one... Oh wait, the next question is this. Number 9 is, what is the first story you ever wrote? The first long story I ever wrote, I think I was in 1st grade, and I know I wrote it, I hand wrote in a notebook, and I know it was fantasy based, and I feel like there was a tree involved, and I had like my grandma read it, and I had my cousin read it, and I was so proud of it, and everyone was so impressed. It was probably from whenever it was that I wrote that story that I showed to everybody. It was probably like 3 pages, but it was a long story for someone that age. Ever since I wrote that, I wanted to be a writer. And then there was another time though that, like, because I'm answering it, so I get to tell whatever stories I want. Sometime in, I think, 4th grade, we had to write fiction stories, and everyone else wrote like a couple page story, and my story was over 30 pages long, and I was like in a to be continued kind of place, because I just had to stop because I had handwritten 30 pages, and the teacher was like, that was maybe overkill for the assignment. But I decided I wanted to be a writer, and I remember it. I don't remember exactly what the whole conversation that led up to was, but I remember deciding I was going to be a writer when I was in 5th grade. Question number 10, what authors have inspired your writing the most? I feel like whenever I read a book, there's something in it that I'm like, oh, this person's so good. I just finished reading Strange the Dreamer by Laini Taylor, and I was just like, this woman writes so beautifully. I'll never write like this, like crisis of character. Like, I'm so completely inspired by her writing. It was beautiful, and I was so impressed. There's something every time I read something. Emily Bronte is of course my like, I just love the way she writes. I wrote a whole video on Wuthering Heights. I will defend it. I will sword fight you to the death about it. Like I love Wuthering Heights so passionately. I hate that Wuthering Heights is just like regulated to like bad romance story. Like it isn't even a romance story. Like oh I'm gonna get so passionate about it. We just got cooler head. No more of that. Anyway, authors who directly, I feel like, had a strong impact in the story that I'm writing right now, that I've written. And I have a video talking more about how like a lot of the inspiration for this story, like the seed of it, came from not writers. Some video games, some pop culture. I have some videos about that if you want to look back on my fantasy worlds that inspired mine and my work in progress tag video. You can get more of that. But Diana Wynne Jones, who wrote Howl's Moving Castle, Elizabeth Marie Pope, who wrote The Perilous Guard, highly recommend The Perilous Guard, and then of course J.K. Rowling, because Harry Potter was a story that had a huge impact on, I feel like, how everybody from the time it was written, on the way that they approached stories. So those ones probably have the biggest impact on the actual story that I'm writing now. And to be honest, Kaye Applegate. If I'm perfectly honest, Animorphs shaped a lot of how I approached stories and how I approach characters as well. Number 11. Do you schedule your writing sessions or do you write whenever you have the time? And I do a little bit of both. I sort of do well figuring out my week and what times I'm going to have gaps when I really don't have anything else I'm going to be doing, and then within that time, kind of my days off when I'm going to be alone for a period of time, then at least a certain amount of time within that period is going to be sit down at the desk and work on writing time. I do schedule my time in where I like need to be sitting down and working on writing, but I also sort of just write when I feel inspired. I feel strongly about that. I hate that people are like, oh, if you only write when you feel inspired, then you'll never get anything done. Like, I feel inspired to write a lot, like all the time. Like ideas come constantly, and so I'm always writing something down. I feel like I only need to schedule it when I am working on a project. Like I need to schedule my revision time. I need to schedule my drafting time. But otherwise, if I don't schedule something, I will have to sit down and write a poem at least once in the week. I will have to sit down and type out a blog post. Like I'll have to write something at some point where it has to be done, and I could put something else off to make sure it gets done right then. So it's just never made sense to me when people were like, oh, inspiration will steer you wrong, it's all fake. Like it just isn't for me. Like inspiration I can rely on to get me places. I fully understand that like when you are in a project, you have to schedule the project, but just writing in general, anytime. Anytime. Oh, you're back. What are you doing? Question number 12. Do you type on a computer, a typewriter? Do you handwrite? And where do you write? I write at my desk, which I've now finally done some videos at, which is over there. I'm not going to turn and show you because that area is a mess. When this area is cleaned up, that area is a mess, and vice versa. And I handwrite outlines, I handwrite poetry the first time, and otherwise I draft in typing on my laptop, 100%. I can't handwrite for long periods of time. Like if you can see my notes for this, who can read that? I can't read that, so I can't be writing that way. It gets worse and worse as it goes along. Half of these aren't even letters. Okay, last question, question number 13. It's kind of weird that this has 13 questions in this. I don't know, is anybody else like mildly superstitious? 13 questions is awkward. So we'll just call this the last question. What are you most looking forward to now that you're a part of AuthorTube? I don't know, because I've been doing this for a while now, quietly here by myself on my own little island of Poets Anonymous. Poets Not So Anonymous, because my face is on the screen. I don't know, I guess learning more. That's why I came to AuthorTube in the first place. That's why I watch other people's videos, is to learn more and to feel like I connect to people. I want to spread more appreciation for poetry. I feel like even with the rise of interest in poetry, there's still so much work that needs to be done. I feel like I was so discouraged by my schooling career. Even though I focused on poetry, I was so discouraged by the people around me and their complete, not even a lack of interest in poetry, but like distaste for poetry. It was so strong, it was shocking. And so I feel like we need to spread it more. Like, it's good that poetry is getting out there more, but I feel like people need to become more comfortable with it, and I'm hoping to do some of that. That feels like the work that I want to get done, is for people to feel more comfortable with poetry. I did a poetry recommendations video. If you haven't checked that out yet, check that out. I'll do another one in the future. I've been reading some more things, so we'll see. I'm hoping to find more like-minded writers out there. It would be so great to find more people who are kind of moving at the same pace as me for writing, who are on the same trajectory in terms of writing. I'd like to find more people who both write novels and poetry. I'd like to find more people who are currently at the querying stage. I'd like to find more people who are really focused on getting their work out into the world while maintaining a day job. Like, just people who are kind of on the same path. And I feel like that's why I turned to Authortube in the first place, and that's kind of what I'm looking for out of it. So that's been the newbie author tag. I'm gonna kind of go Marissa Mohi's path and tag whoever is interested, because I feel like there is a bit of a clickiness when it comes to tagging, and I feel like it's more fun when we can all just kind of embrace them and do them, because the tags are really fun to do. So anybody who watches this who is interested, who considers themselves part of AuthorTube, I tag you directly, so get on this. I guess that's all I have to say about that, and talk to you again soon. Bye! I shouldn't have put those bells on you. You guys are very loud and very active right now.